welcome to the Harbor Fund podcast. Today, I have on two of my favorite human beings of all time, my co-founders and dearest friends, Matt Peterson and Freddy Bosche. And I'm Lindsay Hadley. And we co-founded together, along with our friend Phil Webb, who we couldn't convince to come on a podcast to save our lives, this endeavor. And we're excited to share a little bit about its origins, what we're trying to do and accomplish, and answer questions or kind of just ruminate on all that we're musing to accomplish in the coming year and invite you guys in on this journey with us. So thanks for joining us today. So Matt and Freddy, you guys, thanks for coming. I'm so grateful you guys showed up. These guys are busy guys. They got really cool things to be doing.
Matt's busy.
Matt is. But Freddy's busy too.
Painting my fingernails.
Freddy's here. Actually, we're trying to convince Freddy to move to Utah. Do you know this, Matt? Have you heard these stories?
I can see some serious advantages to that, Freddie.
Yeah,
so
right?
I'm a plus one on Freddie moving to Utah.
You're endorsing it. Okay, well, I wanted to start by talking about how Harbor Fund started, and I'll just give a little background and context that when I first had the idea, it actually came from just, funny enough, Matt and I kind of got into filmmaking around the same time, and Freddie. We kind of all got into filmmaking. Freddie's been in the biz for a long time. Freddie, maybe we'll start there. Share a little bit about how long you've been in showbiz.
I've been in showbiz all my life. Showbiz is my heart, my life. I've been doing off-Broadway since I was young, and traveled around the world doing off-Broadway theater. And
he's being very humble. He was the lead of Forza Bruta and De La Guardo, which were critically acclaimed. And he was a global phenom, and he's being very humble.
Man, if we're going to start with my resume for Harbor, we're screwed.
No,
let's go with Matt.
I like this.
I like it when Lindsay does.
Yeah.
I always like to hear what she says
about like a resume. Yeah, because it's exaggerated.
It sounds amazing when she says it.
It's the truth.
So Seth Rogen, tell us about it.
It's true. It's the truth.
Also, Freddie, you were an acrobat for a while, right?
It's basically, it was like Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah.
He was running up on walls. They would have rain coming in on the audience. He would grab people out of their seats. Freddie did that, and that's how is that where you transitioned into acting?
I know I was acting before that. It was just that was my dream job. I got that and then travel around the world doing it. Cool. And these are some of my best friends besides you two guys.
Yeah, which is how we met, because you became friends with Jared Butler, who's on our advisory board, who's been incredibly supportive of Harbor Fund and came recently to our CA event and like you said, stole the show. Everyone was like, oh, the man has arrived. But you guys met because he was in your audience, right? And he loved the show. Yeah,
we had a mutual friend, and he came to the show, and then we hit it off.
Amazing. And then he and you stayed buddies, and then you met Hugh Evans at Global Citizen and brought Jerry
actually, just right before that, because of Alex Weiselitz, and who's
also a good friend to the fund.
Yes.
Amazing supporter and advisor, and basically, you brought Jerry into the Global Citizen world. You helped us with other relationships like the Mandela family, Nelson Mandela's family, and you helped introduce us to and support with Whoopi Goldberg and others. And you just were there helping out with our branding and our creative and business development in the early days that we became buddies. And Freddie and I
said inappropriate things at that Larry King.
Yes, we did. I had Freddie come to Utah. Was that your first time to Utah?
Yeah.
And he was hosting.
Oh, no, not first time to Utah. I'd been to Moab and the Arches.
But to maybe Salt Lake? He came,
maybe, yeah.
He came to Salt Lake and he was emceeing our Global Citizen fundraising event with Larry King. And the first thing he said was, all these women look so beautiful. I can see why you all practice polygamy, which was a good hit, but everybody laughed.
I got a giggle.
You did get a giggle. So
was Larry's wife there?
Larry's wife was there.
She's from Utah, yeah.
She is, yeah.
She's good looking too.
She is beautiful, Sean. Okay, so Freddie,
yeah,
you and I worked on the Flash Before the Bane project. You helped be a little script doctor over some of the script, and they took your notes. And do you remember a little bit? You want to share a little bit about you getting involved in that project? That was a project that prior to Harbor Fund, I had raised philanthropic dollars to help finish their funding off. And this idea of taking philanthropist dollars for a scripted film was the first time I'd really seen that. Although it'd been happening, of course. The series The Chosen, it's done $200 million or something in capital, and most of it, 70% of it was from donors. That was from the general public, but I went to some incredible donors like the Sorensens and other amazing families and high net worth people that donated to help finish that film. But when we were working on it, we gave some notes, and you helped with the script writing. That's where we kind of were putting our fingers on film projects for the first time together, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what did you think about that film project, and what were your thoughts about it? Because that's one of our projects coming out this next year.
Yeah, I know. It's awesome. I mean, that was the origins, really. You had already done that documentary, Uncharitable. And then that's the first time that you started putting together the things that you could use philanthropic dollars for films as well. And then the whole perpetual fund thing came from that, right?
That's right.
Well, that was Matt Damon, Ben Affleck's, and the next one was the one with DiCaprio's team that came to you, and that's when you put it together. But in terms of me being involved with that, I mean, I was in a funk during that time, and that like you were basically giving me bread to go try to make this better, and not even try to make this better. What do you think of this? And then I added on, and that from that funk that I was in, that like helped me go, there's life out there, you know, from that.
That was amazing. It was so fun. We had so much fun. Freddie came on as a script doctor, and I think that was like, and since then you've been a script doctor on the Homestead series that Matt's an executive producer of. So I'll kind of back up because I'm getting into the minutia, but basically I had spent 10 years raising philanthropic dollars for causes that I cared about, and got into filmmaking a few years ago, executive produced the documentary called Uncharitable, and then came on as an executive producer for Flash Before the Bang, bringing this last funding all through philanthropic dollars. And I was really nervous to bring investment into film because I had heard horror stories of people's money, as I always say, going to money movie heaven. Like, it was just, a lot of people lost their money in film. It's something like only 3% of independent films that make money, 12% of films at large make money. I mean, it's just like not a great place to invest money. And so I was really nervous to go to my high net worth friends and ask them to invest in film. But I was okay with them donating because there's no expectation of return, and they're enabling this beautiful art form that I believe in, and the impact and the stories that it could amplify mattered to me because I'm a total impact junkie. But ultimately, as I brought these philanthropists in, I then started getting demand signals, and that's where Appian Way asked if I could raise money for one of their projects, which is Leonardo DiCaprio's production company, after I'd brought Matt and Ben's project money. And I was like, wait a minute, I was sitting on my couch in Hawaii, and I was like, there's got to be a way for me to make this more sustainable than just like a one-off project after project deal. And I'd seen the model at Acumen Fund. Shout out to, I think it's Jacqueline Novogratz. I want to meet her one day. We invited her to our film forum this September, but she couldn't make it. But want to see you there next year, my friend. But her model of a venture capital shaped film fund that was perpetual, it wasn't a film fund, sorry, is a social impact investing fund. And she was investing in social enterprises that make the world better, but all the returns would stay in the fund. And it was this perpetual engine for funding solutions in the private sector. I thought, what if we did that in film and television? And the first call I made was to our mutual friend, Jason Orvis, which is kind of how Matt and us all got involved. Can you tell us a little bit, when we were in Eswatini and Freddie was telling us about MADE and then your background with Angel, because this is kind of a fun moment, because the second call I made was to Matt Peterson, which I'll pick up again, but maybe you can share how you got in film, Matt. And Matt's, by the way, he's never going to tell you about him, but incredible background, both in venture capital. As a tech entrepreneur, had, unicorn exit. He's also a developer. He's got beautiful properties that he's developing here in Utah, and owns this beautiful private property up at Powder Mountain with this amazing, kind of white glove ski resort situation called Monument. And he's kind of just like a Renaissance man. Like, Freddie and I talk a lot about Matt, and he reminds us so much of our mentor who passed away, Joe Ritchie, with his humility and high capacity and high character, and just his total like rational thinking all the time. But he's also really fun. The combination of those things, he's like a unicorn. You usually don't see, as our friend Jason Orvis said, You don't see somebody who's so analytical that's also so emotive and so emotionally intelligent. Like he's kind of a freak that way. We're so lucky to have Matt. So Matt, share.
There's nothing quite like a Hadley intro. That's why I show up to these things.
It's all true.
In fact, just quickly, it reminded me, you talked about Monument in the Mountains, up there. It's kind of how we met, right?
Yeah.
So,
yes.
I got a call from you out of the blue one day, and it's like, hey, I've got a bone to pick with you. I was like, oh, I'm in trouble here, right? Anyway, I had taken Jeff, your husband, skiing, and evidently he came home and told you that was the best day of his life.
The best day of his life. And I said, what am I, chopped liver? We got married. I bore you 3 children. He's like, did I stutter?
Yeah.
So anyway.
To be fair, that was an exceptional bluebird, heli ski day. We had Jeff up there.
He did. So Matt made my husband's life. And so I called him teasing him about that. But I immediately fell in love with Matt on this call, just his incredible energy and heart. And we started talking about business. And I found out you started the Wolverine Fund, which is a VC fund at UVU.
Yeah,
which
helped
is my former
found
school.
that, kind of the roots. I did an MBA at BYU and, was a member of Cougar Capital there with Gary Williams. So that was kind of my initial foray. And I had, done some tech startups prior to going into business school and then just kept doing them after, right? But kind of have been, around the venture capital and private equity worlds. And so, just wanted to give a similar experience that I had sort of in my MBA to, some undergrad students at UVU. So started that.
Really cool.
Helped start that. Really, Jeff Moss, a good friend of mine,
Shout out to Jeff.
Shout out to Jeff. He was kind of the visionary there. He was working for UVU and, kind of pitched me on the idea. And I wrote the initial check and then, got tricked into working for him for a while. It's kind of like I got tricked into working for you for a while here, so.
By the way, they won national championship, right? For a VC, isn't that right? They took,
I think the
killed
first
it.
year we did sort of like this national, or I could say an international competition called VCIC. And I think we won our region and then, I think we went to finals or something. I can't
like
remember, but we, our first year kind of out of the gate.
I just remember winning. I just remember winning happening.
Yeah. So they've had some good success over there too.
That's awesome.
Yeah, helping get a bunch of these kids placed in in these finance roles. But oddly enough, I had just also recently invested in a company called Angel Studios. You kind of mentioned The Chosen. That was kind of their foray. Out in, and I really never saw myself working in film. Excuse me. I really never saw myself working in film, but I was sort of enamored with Angel's mission, and was just kind of talking to some of the people over there, the Harmons, and a good friend of mine, Rob McMillan, and I was just asked them how I could help, and they're like, well, go be an executive producer, find a bunch of TV shows and films that kind of align with our mission, which is to amplify light. And I'm like, well, that's never going to happen. I don't see myself ever doing that. I don't know anything about that. I'd kind of come from the tech world and, was kind of getting into real estate, mostly unemployed is kind of how I viewed my life, And then, I had met Jason Orvis through you, I think, and Jason had invited us out to do some, get our hands dirty out in Africa, building some community gardens, really where my family was out there. We got to know Freddy out there. And I think both of you guys started talking about
Freddy. It was Freddy's doing.
The Maid, you mean?
The Maid TV show. And I'm like, hey, I don't know if this makes sense at all, but I was sort of, told to go find some TV shows. We can connect some people, blah, 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 right? Yeah. And, the Maid TV show, didn't go anywhere, but it sort of launched this, deeper discussion. And all of a sudden I found out, Jason Orvis was a best-selling author and introduced the Angel guys to him. And we had this event. Anyway, long story short, it kind of led us on this path, where, I've got movies coming out and TV, a couple of TV series, that I'm helping raise capital for and executive producing. And then Lindsay calls me and and again, tricked me into helping with Harbor. I remember that phone call. It was pretty amazing. Like, I sort of, I'm sort of a gut instinct entrepreneur, right? So when I hear an idea, I can kind of feel whether or not, it's something I want to get involved with. And I knew immediately it was almost painful because I'm like, oh no, this is too good of an idea, And I was just telling Lindsay, I didn't even know you were going to invite me to, work with you on it. I was just like, oh my gosh, I got the chills. I'm like, Lindsay, that's going to work. You got to go do that. And she's like, well, come do it with me. I'm like, oh crap. I walked right into that one, didn't I?
I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful to you. Yeah, my first call was to Jason, honestly, because Jason, he's brilliant. And also I know he's somebody that will tell me if he doesn't like an idea. Like he won't pander. Yeah. Or placate or anything. So he was like, I don't know anything. I can't imagine. Why would people donate to a film? I have no idea. Like he just kind of like, this isn't my world. I don't get it. But he was in the middle of developing his series for Homestead where they were getting investment. And so I was like, okay. I mean, he didn't say no, it was bad. He just kind of said, it's not really I don't see it or whatever. It's not really my jam. And I think he's the only person, honestly, Jason, I think he's the only person to date who's ever like not been like, that's a really good idea or didn't respond the way you did, which is great. I'm glad I had that first one out of the way because the second call was to Matt and Matt was like, wow, yeah, I have chills. And I was just like, whoa, that's a big deal. And then anyway, when Matt agreed to help, I was like, this is my dream come true because I would try to weasel my way into working near and around Matt to have him rub off on me. And all of you just need to know what a gift he's been to us. So we're so grateful. So we get started and I immediately thought of Freddy because Freddy and I had been working on this series.
How can I make sure he does not get involved?
Opposite. But Freddy and I always been working together in different capacities, different charitable endeavors, and we've had a lot of adventures with each other. But we were trying to develop a TV show called Made. It didn't go anywhere because actually Jason Momoa came out with the same idea ahead of us. So funny enough, we thought, because I'd pitched his management for him to be the host of our concept, which was like showing artists and craftsmen, kind of like the way Chef's Table. And long story short, he didn't, his team passed on it. And then a show came out on HBO called On the Roam, and it was the same exact concept. And at first we were like, they stole our idea. They didn't. We found out that it predated us. They were just kind of mining us for information to see how far along we were and took a bunch of meetings. But like ultimately, it's so interesting in Hollywood, and I've learned this is a little segue, but like, sometimes ideas are just ideas whose time has come. And sometimes Elizabeth Gilbert talks about in her book, Big Magic, that they're like living entities, ideas, and they come down and they try to find a home. And you'll find this simultaneous invention in most of the creative art forms. It'll be like similar kind of concepts or similar ideas all happening at once. And I feel like maybe it's in the zeitgeist of culture. Maybe it's the story that needs to be told at that time. So we feel really privileged at Harbor because we do feel this is an idea as time has come. And just to recap, what we're doing here is it's this, venture capital shaped fund that's perpetual, that's going to invest in television shows, documentaries, and is investing in, that takes an equity position of each of these films pari passu with the terms of the cap table. And then those returns in principle come back in the fund, making it this evergreen war chest for storytelling. But we're leveraging patrons of the arts, these benefactors, these people who understand the power of film and that Hollywood is the most powerful PR engine in the world. And they're writing checks, getting a tax deduction. They get to have cool experiences like be on set, come to the red carpet events, have executive producer credit. Maybe their kid gets to be an extra, some fun things like that. But at the end of the day, they're enabling the kings and queens of our culture and storytellers to tell stories that actually matter. So Freddie, last night this is kind of where this all started. And Freddie joined us, and then we brought in Phil Webb, who's unbelievable. And he really is camera shy, which makes no sense because he's very charismatic and dreamy on camera. But Phil has a background, he has a master's degree in nonprofit management from Oxford and has ran his family office foundation for 20 years. He's been incredibly supportive of all kinds of endeavors that we've been involved in, and really brilliant strategist, and really one of the most emotionally intelligent and relationally driven people I've ever met, and deeply humble, and just sees what needs to happen and the way through problems, and just is such a servant leader. We're so lucky to have him too. But Freddie and I, it was like a natural segue because we were already putting our fingerprints on projects and trying to figure out how to do a 12-step, something about, addiction recovery, or we had a passion around that. We were just kind of finding our way in the dark. Like, we want to do something creative together. And it felt like a great place to do it. And to
work with Joe too.
Yeah. Yep. That's right. Maybe you can share a little bit about that too, because it's interesting how all of these, like all of us around the same time, it's not like all of us have been in film and television producing forever. We kind of all the same time independently, like found our way into this space and then got together. I mean, really, Phil's the only one that got dragged in like cold. It was like, come join. But the three of us,
I begged myself to get in.
You did? Yeah.
Yeah, I did the scamming, I feel. Joe, actually, I feel like I should ask the questions. I don't know the answers. You guys have the answers.
Go ahead, ask any questions.
Yeah, so let me go with this. Matt, how big of an impact do you feel like we've made so far?
I think we're just getting started. We were about to have, our first film, that we invested in release.
This weekend, premiering.
Yeah, this weekend, right?
At Telluride.
So that's exciting. I think maybe I'll just talk real quick about some thesis ideas, like how we can have an impact and why.
Love it.
Why? Because, like, again, it's early days here. And definitely the landscape in film is shifting. Right? Mm-hmm. Like with the advent of AI and, we've seen these, strikes that are sort of resolved, but not, everyone's sort of unsettled. You have so many, industry professionals out of work, and, with these new models, coming, the subscription models have sort of taken over and, it's just an interesting time in the industry. But I think the core idea here with Harbor, really, the reason that we exist really is to bring these projects to life that maybe wouldn't have otherwise, had any breath of life, sort of breathed into them. And honestly, like if you look at the impact that some of these, massive blockbuster films have had that have dealt with social issues, sort of the pound per pound, sort of investment from a philanthropist, it's pretty substantial, right? So you take a film like Blood Diamond, who, which was a massive success in the box office, had, Leonardo DiCaprio in it, right? Mm-hmm. But it had a massive impact on how we look at, ethical, supply chain and global supply chain, and changed the world.
Changed the policies at De Beers, which they're literally changed the mining industry.
And
massive. That's
right. And so we want more of those types of films to be made. We want more Aaron Brockovich type films. We want more Blood Diamond, more Shawshank, more Schindler's List. These films that really had impact at scale. We'd like to enable more of those to be made. And I think Jason's question to you is profound. Like, why would a philanthropist donate to a film?
Yeah.
Well, the reason is because, these issues that you care about can get massive exposure and you can have more impact, coming in through this medium than almost any other medium.
That's right.
And so that's really the power of Harbor, is sort of enabling that, that transaction to happen, where a philanthropist is looking for impact and, these filmmakers are looking to tell these, high impact stories. Well, we sort of match make those two. And then these beautiful high impact stories get made, and impact is achieved at scale, a scale that otherwise, is not achievable. And then, if it's commercially successful, those funds come back, to the Evergreen Fund, and we do it all over again. We rinse and repeat. So it's a pretty powerful, pretty elegant model, that we really hope is going to go, right? And we're starting to see. I think we've invested in 7 or 8 films. I'm not
11
even sure.
total.
11
now.
total, right? So,
yeah.
And with more on the way, and we're just again excited to see some of the fruits start to be born here, and we'll see. But we're excited.
Well, we'll know a lot in the next 6 to 12 months because we have 6 projects that'll be out in the wild, and we'll see what the returns are and how they're received in the public. But more than anything, what's really neat about our model is because the financiers, the people funding this, are not expecting an ROI for their dollar, they're expecting an ROI and impact. We can keep learning on which where to make the best bets, because in a portfolio that's diversified, a couple films can make the whole portfolio sustainable and allow us to keep doing this, which is really compelling. And so anybody listening to this or watching this that is a creative, if you have a project that you know is just crazy commercially viable and you don't need our money, we've had a couple friends in the film industry carve us in on deals and let us be a part of projects that they didn't need our money. We're some newbie startup, nonprofit, and new people to the film industry. And they let us in on those deals because they believe in what Harbor is, which is like a future well for them as creatives and a love letter to the creative community. But I just want to say, people have been leveraging philanthropic dollars since before any of us were born into film. It's been predominantly in documentaries. And then, of course, we all remember public television, PBS. If you love our programming, donate now from the general public. But it's an idea that's new to do it in major television and scripted and high production projects. And people have asked me why haven't people done this in the past? I think Mark Burnett said, is this legal? If it's illegal, why has no one done this? He couldn't believe it. And I think the biggest answer I can give is it's an archaic notion to be we shouldn't pay people well when we're doing good. That's ironically, the first documentary ever made was called Uncharitable, about this very subject that Ed Norton stars in and Stephen Gyllenhaal directed, about Dan Plata's work about the demonization of overhead. And I just think historically philanthropists felt allergic to the idea of paying a Leonardo DiCaprio's $17 million appearance fee for a movie like Blood Diamond or Liam Neeson for Taken. The idea that it just went into someone's pocket and paid them extraordinary, fees, or that all of it is, catering and production and lights and sound. It's all overhead. And philanthropists in the past have wanted very simple metrics. I want to know how many wells I put in and how many, vaccines I gave and how many backpacks kids got in schools. And what there's starting to be a sophistication essentially from investors and donors saying, no, I care about the greatest potential lever for good. If leveraging the most powerful PR engine in the world that is Hollywood to have these outcomes, totally worth it. So for example, the movie Lion that Nicole Kidman is in, Dev Patel, it's about vulnerable children, and she adopts a young boy from India. And that movie was seen by the executives at UNICEF. Taya Leone, who's actually executive producer of one of our films, Orphan Myth, with us. She said they saw that and the senior leadership was so inspired by that film that they changed one of their programs and they changed their strategy of how to care for vulnerable children. And 1.2 million children have been returned to their families through prevention, reunification, and or adoption into close of kin instead of being adopted internationally and or being funded to stay institutionalized in long-term warehousing of orphanages. And she said that film changed their lives. And I don't think Nicole Kidman even knows this. I hope one day I get a chance to tell her and the creatives and the directors of that film, did you know that happened out of UNICEF? Because at this level of scale, when you're touching culture at this breadth, you can't really get clear metrics. You can have some anecdotal evidence and you can be look at this incredible correlation or causational impact like a story like that, but it will never capture completely. How could you ever tell the story of what the movie Schindler's List did to combat anti-Semitism or build empathy for the plight of the Jewish people, or the movie Pay It Forward? Who has any idea of how to capture what the movie Pay It Forward did in our culture? And I know for me, movies have changed my life and left such a profound impact. Shawshank Redemption, I saw the face of God in that movie. And how do you quantify something like that? It's very tough. And so we're doing something that takes kind of a different thinking and a kind of a bigger picture, something a little more open for esoteric stuff. Than it's not as simple to measure. It takes a lot of good faith and understanding, I guess, of human nature and a belief in story. But I just wanted to share that people have been doing this. I think we're just applying it in a new structure with the perpetual fund. And it's new for television and scripted film for the most part in the last decade. So we're really seeing a new wave of enabling the arts. But anyway, hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this. We both love documentaries.
I love them,
but they just don't quite get the reach, you know, as a big blockbuster film. You know, so yes, it's difficult to measure, but when you see it, right?
Yeah.
This impact at scale, this Lion movie, I mean, how do you measure improving 1.2 million children's lives?
Right.
it's not measurable, you know, in a traditional sense. And so, you know, ultimately, like, that's the impact we're sort of going for. And it's a tough industry right now. Like, fundraising's difficult. I've sort of been in the fire, you know, with a couple of my own projects. You know, it's tough to do. So we hope to make that, you know, a little bit easier for the right projects and, you know, the right messages.
Freddie, what was it that made you want to get involved? Like,
I was just going to ask Matt because Matt was, aside from you, I freaking love you. So, you know, like, whatever you're doing, I'm like, I want to do that too, you know? And Matt, I love you too, man. You know, I've only known you for a couple of years, but I think you're brilliant, such a good-hearted person, the second person closest to Jesus that I know.
that's an inside joke. It sounded irreverent.
Lindsay's pole position to the church. I said that Lindsay was the person that was most like Jesus.
He came to my church and he was a visitor and got up and it was my birthday and basically
ruined her birthday.
Got up and told everyone I was like Jesus and I wanted to die 1,000 times.
And Matt was like, why am I not the closest person?
Very
Jesus,
nice
you
of
know?
him, but
No, I was just interested in moving up. At that point, I was nowhere near second. I don't even think I was top 10. I don't even think I was on the piece of paper.
Actually,
and so, like, I've just been steadily, you know, making life choices to move up that list, and move up Freddie's list. You know?
Well, you definitely have. Anyway, to answer your question, one aside from you being involved and Phil, it was you, Matt, that you got goosebumps, and I think you already answered that question. But I'm just wondering, is there something initially that hit you then, aside from all the other stuff that you just said now, that you were like, wow, this gives me, because you got pitched stuff all the time, and
yeah, you do get pitched a lot.
Yeah. That's a great question. You know, and as I started my sort of own philanthropic journey, you know, we all kind of had, Lindsay introduced me to, you know, one of her mentors, Joe Ritchie, right? So I'd been kind of thinking, you know, and Joe passed during COVID, you know, we were so sad to lose him. But I was sort of feeling like I was beginning a bit of a work, you know, with Joe and with Lindsay and Jason. I sort of see.
That's where we met, actually, at Joe's house for the first time.
Was it? Yeah. Out on Carmel.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. And if Brad Pitt's listening, we'd love to invite back out to that house.
Let us do
that place.
an event there.
Oh my gosh. Love that place.
Brad Pitt bought Joe's beautiful Carmel castle after he passed away.
Yeah. But so I remember as I was sort of starting, this was a few years even before I met Lindsay, and I was trying to figure out, you know, some pathways to give back. I was talking to a friend of mine and I told him, hey, I, you know, just made this donation, and, you know, he was a partner of mine, and, you know, he has his own exits, and he was sort of asking me like, oh, well, did you check these metrics and how much of that dollar is going directly to the person that, you know, we're trying to benefit? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Let me think through that. And so I went and kind of researched some of that, and I came back after I found the numbers and told him, he was like, oh no, I don't donate to anything that, you know, that's not getting at least 80% of the money directly to the person in need, you know? And I was like, oh, okay, well that, like, it didn't quite sit right. I understood what he meant, right? I was like, well, if you're making a donation, shouldn't the vast majority of that donation be going to the person it's trying to help? And I'm like, wow, okay, I think that makes sense. And then as I started thinking about that, you know, idea, I'm like, nothing really works at scale like that, right? There's always some, you know, and being a tech entrepreneur, like, my job was trying to get things to scale, you know? And yes, it is about the end user, you know, like in the tech business in the end, right? Like, it's all focused on there, but like the amount of time and resources and money and, you know, blood, sweat, tears, treasure that goes into, you know, a building that's something that actually has value is just an extreme, right? Like, if you started with the mentality that you're just going to, you know, like, let's say you took a venture investment and you're trying to, you know, your goal is to deliver, you know, value to that, you know, end user. You don't just hand them the money.
Right.
they don't know what to do with it, right? That's not going to solve any problems long term. So I started like piecing that together, sort of independent of Lindsay. And so when, you know, I saw her documentary and, you know, we started talking about it, I'm like, okay, this is actually the right way to do this, right? Like we invest, right? Like we build something that has long-term value and sustainability. And then, you know, these platforms that are created then, you know, allow people to generate more value and create and be creative, right? And so like really it's platforms that have the value. And so investing in those sorts of things. So I started caring less about, you know, what the traditional, you know, what traditional philanthropy looked like, and started caring more about like, okay, well, what are we really doing to change things, you know, in a way? And, you know, coming from the tech industry, I knew sort of the power of platform. And so that's in the end, you know, when I got the goosebumps, I'm like, this feels platformish, right? Like this is a basis of sustainability. It's really an elegant structure, right? Where, you know, I think it was, you know, Richard Branson that was talking to us about, you know, his first few investments in film when we did our event out at his place. And he's like, oh, well, yeah, I lost my money in film. If it could have been a donation, I just, you know, I would have felt way better about it. We would have had way more fun, right? So let's just do it like this, right? And get the art out into the in the ecosystem, and start to, you know, focus less on like, hey, did this film put money back in my pocket, but and start focusing on the impact, right? And I see Harbor as really a platform play in the end, and all this value that can spin off this platform. You know, we've seen it, right? Like every time we have a conversation with someone who's in the industry, they're like, that's really powerful. I can't believe this hasn't been done. How can I be a part of it, right? And so we have, you know, A-list celebrities coming and proactively seeking us out. And when does that happen? Ever, right? In all the years you've been doing it, it's always more of a pull, you know. And we've really got to, you know, I think to honor this idea, you know, we've got to take a big swing at it, right? And so, you know, and again, so I guess that's the other thing is I really like moonshots as a tech investor, right? And I saw this as like, oh man, if this works and we go build $100 million perpetual fund, that's just going to, you know, be an engine for good, you know, for as long as we live and possibly outlive us. And I can be a part of that.
Well, this brings up this thought for me because right now, for those listening, and, you know, we've been learning a lot about the industry, all three of us, we're kind of in this steep learning curve, and we're so grateful for the mentors we've had, like our advisors, like Mark Burnett and Patty Jenkins and Geraldine Dreyfus and Katie Couric and Jared Butler, all these amazing people from the industry, Tony Bound, who's the senior vice president of Paramount Pictures, all these titans of the industry have been advising us. Bill O'Dowd from Dolphin Entertainment. These people have been taking time to teach us about this industry. And, you know, what I can tell, and this is maybe, I'd love you to jump in if you guys have any thoughts, but essentially, the industry's transformed from the films that we often use as our case studies for Harbor. We say, you know, Blood Diamond, Schindler's List, Hotel Rwanda, Aaron Brockovich, Taken. They're 15, 20 years old. Like these films they're not as common. When I have to kind of stretch for ones today, I'm like Love on the Spectrum. You know, like they're not as household.
Sound of Freedom.
Sound of Freedom's a great one. Yeah, like these are there are a few for sure, but they're not as prolific as they were in the 90s. Like a lot of films had deep meaning. Even movies that were more independent, had more value-based, kind of redemptive meaning behind them, that were more machines of empathy. Things like Braveheart and Last Mohicans and Dances with Wolves. Like just movies that totally shaped culture. You know, they're harder to come by. Most of what you're seeing now is repeat IP that's going to like from animated to live action, or just sequel after sequel after sequel in a series of IP like the Marvels and the DCs or whatever. And the reason why a lot of that is what's being greenlit in studios. I mean, the TV series we were just watching last night called Studio, they're making fun of this, but you know, the lead studio guy, in order to be the head executive, has to make a movie about Kool-Aid. He wants to make a movie with Scorsese that's like a beautiful piece of art, and he's in this conflict of the commerciality of this kind of shameless marketing thing. And you know, what's interesting is that part of that has come from pressure of the streamers is the streamers have all kind of become a monopoly. There's only really 5 major streamers that are buying. So there's not a lot of buyers and a lot of places to get content. And because of short form content from social media, it's taking people away from movies and theaters. And when they can get the movies in their home, why would they go to a theater? So the types of movies that are big blockbuster successes that drive people into theater is much more of a difficult hurdle. And so they're finding that, that studios are not taking that risk. And even Reed Hastings who's the founder of Netflix, told Geraldine, who's the most prolific social impact documentarian in the world, I think. She's produced 200 documentaries, won more Oscars than anybody I know. She did Navalny, Biggest Little Farm, Won't You Be My Neighbor, The Cove. She did Born into Brothels was her Oscar-winning debut film. But all of these projects that she's done over her career, he said, we're not going to be buying these at Netflix anymore because they don't drive an audience. They're not getting 1 million new subscribers. So we're oversaturated. The live unscripted TV shows had their heyday for a minute when there was the COVID lockdown and also the strikes for scriptwriters and everybody. And they're oversaturated in that. So a lot of these projects that tend to be the ones that tell these impact stories are not getting picked, not getting greenlit, not getting funded. And so, what we're seeing is then this kind of topsy-turvy stuff of that. And I think when I talk to consumers, they're sad. They miss the other better, more meaningful stuff. And we were talking about that last night. And Freddie, maybe you can share, because you helped us with the rebrand, and we were kind of working with ChatGPT last night to talk through like how to better communicate the value of why would you put films and money into films. But maybe you can share a little bit about your thoughts about intentional media and entertainment and like our time, because you had some great thoughts about that. I think that helped inform our rebrand and everything.
Well, let's talk about the problem first. Meaning, Matt was like, pause, we're going to do pause be the thing that like we're the harbors are the people that pause to like the finances aren't going through.
We're the people that slow everything down. Yeah. We're the people that jam everything up.
I was like, yeah, what do you think of that? Right. So that's counter to what we're trying to do. We're trying to like
accelerate.
Yeah. And before I go into that, part of my thought was that as you were saying, everything that you were saying was that Mike Huddleston and I were talked about what the brand meant to us.
Mike's the guy who helped us rebrand.
Yes.
Our friend.
Thank you. And one of his things was, it's 11:11, and I don't need to say that. But that is like the pause symbol, actually. So every time it's 11.
Freddie's reaching,
No, but for real, you see how it's 2 ones?
I get it. I get it.
Okay.
Freddie's the creative. He's the artist on our team.
Yes, sober as well. I feel like I have to mention that. Giving a scale at F was what Mike and I talked about, And so when you were saying the reason why I like the structure is because a lot of change can happen, and that's where you saw the
scalability.
Yeah, I saw the scalability because we did those shows, and to me, it was life-changing watching it. It's life-changing for other people that did it, not for everybody, obviously, but for a lot of people would cry. They'd, they were really emotional, and they had beautiful experiences, and as did I for the off-Broadway that I did. So, but it was like 500, 1,000 people a night. That was the most we could do, and. But movies have that scalability, to me. So the idea of pause in relation to all this is the sacred pause, like to take a moment before it's intentional entertainment, before you press play, before you put money, either you're watching the thing, and more so, what's the time and energy that I'm going to put into something? I'm going to watch 2 hours of this thing. Am I going to feel edified afterwards? And by the way, you're the one that really taught me what that word edifying means, of how we have to edify each other. One person can't just edify the other person. And that's the other element of it to me. Part of the stretching here is that there's 2 things here. And it's like two different ways of thinking. And harbor, when we have the video of it, it'll make the H sound and turn into play. So it's like we're bridging two worlds. The safe harbor of being you're out in the ocean or you're out in land, but the harbor is the place where two people meet with two different stories, and these stories are dignified, and we're able to, as a culture, relate to each other in a way that we normally wouldn't. We see stories of like Hotel Rwanda, Lion, things that I would have never have been able to see, and I travel a lot, but I would have never been able to get into the depth of the emotion, of the loss, of the fear, of the exuberance, of the excitement, of the love, if I wasn't engaged in this movie that's like motivated, or it's a machine to manipulate my emotions in a way that really sparks empathy, as David Oyelowo or Robert Ebert talks about. And that's this medium that does this for me. But back to the pause element, it's taking that moment that before you press play, before we play, where do I really want to go? What's my North Star? Stephen Covey says we climb up the ladder of success only to realize we put the ladder on the wrong place. So pause before you go, oh yeah, that's where I want to go. And that's all it is. So hopefully we won't be the people that slow stuff down. Yeah. Not when you're around, Matt. Yeah.
So real quick, you mentioned empathy. I mean, this is a newer concept. I'm learning the power. Like I can recognize the power of film, but that idea of empathy, like these are things like we can do empathy at scale. Empathy is typically like it's a personal, it's a one-on-one thing, right? Like I'm showing empathy for somebody. The magic of film is that we can do empathy at scale, right? Like imagine, 10 million people all feeling the same thing at the same time, as they watch a film, that changes their mind about something, right? I think it's a Ginsberg quote that says something like great change happens, one small step at a time, something along those lines. And these highly impactful films, I think that's exactly what it is. It's like sort of shifting us maybe one step in the right direction together. And, we have just like a crisis of this sort of lack of empathy, for each other, all this short form content that we're consuming. It's like we really have a mental health crisis. And I think a lot of it stems from this. We don't empathize, like we don't like ruining someone's life. I was fishing up in Alaska when this sort of Coldplay concert thing happened, and I had no idea what anyone was talking about when I got back. And it was
the kiss cam.
Yeah, the kiss cam, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, my first thought was like, oh my gosh, yes, some people made some poor choices, but like we're destroying families and lives. Like it's a real thing, And just the number of people that sort of jumped on the bandwagon to talk about it and to like leverage the views and leverage the clicks, like we're destroying people.
It's like they already destroyed their families with their actions, and then we just added fuel to it as a society.
Yeah, and I think it, like a lot of the short form content, I'm not saying all of it, but a lot of it, and then a lot of, like you were mentioning, Lindsay, the choices that a lot of studios are making, we're kind of stepping backwards a little bit, with some of those things. And I really think, and believe in the power of film to kind of move us forward. But the right stories have to be told, right? And we gotta like make our own situation where those films can get funded.
Well, and I was really thrilled when we all got to meet with one of my longtime mentors, mine and Jeff's dearest friends, Bill Townsend, and he's like an icon of creating movements. He's been behind some of the most powerful movements in culture. He was on the board of Tom's Shoes. He created the largest environmental attributions company in the world, where they take carbon credits. And he started Axiom. He started Q Conference, like just amazing human being. And he told us, you're going to have to figure out things you're going to have to fight for and contend for. This isn't a small idea, because at the end of the day, we're going to be picking films and then driving the kind of creatives and the kind of philanthropists that we're matchmaking based on our values as core founders and board members. And, we're getting more advisors, we're listening, we're learning. But, in picking you three guys, Phil included, Phil Webb, it was for me very intentional of like, I've been doing the, startups and social impact and special projects for 20 plus years. And I really was like, who are people that I know that in a foxhole are so other-centric and so magnanimous and forgiving, and will call me out on my crap and hold me accountable, but also be for me, that also are really, really talented, like at the best of what they do. And it was you three that I thought of. And I am so grateful you guys joined me because I'm having so much fun. In fact, I'll be really vulnerable on the car right here. Freddie and I, we're like brother and sister.
That's what she said, the forgiving part.
He says I'm the sister he never wanted, and that's very true. And we were here, we had a little fight about instructions, and he was right and I was wrong. I just want to say.
That's true.
The GPS was telling us, and I was like, go this way. Anyway,
whatever.
It was more than that. It was like, a low hum of like, we're working together. We're really enmeshed. Like right now he's living in my basement and having to deal with my dog eating the bread that gets left out on the counter or whatever. Anyway, just the chaos of our frantic lives of enmeshing our lives this way. And somebody who's kind of, who's been involved in the harbor ecosystem was like, this isn't really like work. This is like family. And for some people, that's really threatening and really uncomfortable. And I get it because it has high costs because there's real, it does blur the lines. There's enmeshment and dynamics there, but I wouldn't have it any other way. And I'm so grateful because what Bill Townsend said to us was, what matters most by far is what a gift you will be to the people that you encounter. And there's going to be people who meet us and leave us and don't like us. I know we've already made mistakes in our business dealings that have left people not as thrilled, and that breaks my heart because we want to do better because we care about every relationship and every person.
And they've been a gift to us as well.
Yeah, we've been bummed from some of the exchanges too, being human, being flawed. But I think like at the end of the day, I love what he said. He said, "You guys, you need to worry about carrying each other's caskets. Like that at the end of all this, were you there for each other? Did you love each other? Did you show up?" And so when you talk about that empathy at scale, it's like I just am sitting there reflecting internally about how important it is that we have it with each other and our donors and our team. And we're so grateful for the Bad Bet guys to do this production for us. Thanks, Diego and Zach and Garrett and McKenna, who's behind the scenes doing all this work right now for us to go into meetings. And there's so many amazing people that are helping us. And it's just like humbling. And sometimes when you have a big, audacious, hairy goal and you're like, there's something out here and I can change the world, sometimes we forget to change our own internal worlds and our worlds with each other and each other's lives. And so anyway, I'm so honored to do this with you guys. Thanks for putting up with me.
Thank you, Lindsay. Yeah. Where are we going with this, guys?
Oh, the last little bit is we want to talk about something really exciting, which the meeting we're going to right after this as a team is to talk about our Harbor Film Forum. So maybe, Freddie, can you tell about the Harbor Film Forum, the one in Necker, the one we're doing in Montana just briefly, and we're going to do a 2026 one and just share about that because we're putting a stake in the sand here and going to do it in Park City in 2026. But I want to talk a little bit about that. Do you mind sharing about what is the Harbor Film Forum, what we do? Sure.
That's basically where we showcase the films that we're working on and the films that could be getting funded by. So we'll have these super talented people, the creatives will be there, and then the philanthropists will be there. They get together and we watch these things together and say, oh yeah, that's what I'm into, mental illness. Oh yeah, this racial inequality, that's what I'm into. I'll put money into that. And then the rest of the time is just having fun, like Matt tackling me while I'm in the middle of a call. So with
relational,
my friends.
Yeah, building trust equity and community.
Yeah,
really.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, we're finding our tribe, right?
Yeah.
Like it's amazing. Our last event at Necker, I think, wasn't it Patty Jenkins who got sick? She was a keynote for our,
She got the flu with Jeff.
And she's been so great, to come out and support us, and we were scrambling a little bit, and then all of a sudden, David Oyelowo just comes and gives a master class, about
so talented
about Harbor and what we're trying to do, and the support we got from all of our friends out there. Richard was great, and Casey Affleck came. He was great. Sat a panel. Chris Pine was there. I mean, we were starting to find people who believe in the mission and we'll stand up and step in, when, when we need some help. And, it's been great. We expect to have, but I think Freddie's right in the end, right? Like we actually have very little to do with, some of the magic that happens, right? Because when you get smart, talented, people together and, in the room with the right resources, not only do they have a great time, but, amazing projects sort of come out of those things. Totally. And so that's really what our forums are about, is getting, having these two worlds collide, right? Having this creative world and this, sort of philanthropic world. And, they've sort of met each other a little bit. They know about each other, but they're not really doing a lot of sort of these impact projects together. Every once in a while you have, and a lot of, especially the A-list celebrities, they'll have their own causes, right? A lot of times it's their own foundation and their friends, sort of supporting those things. But, sort of the big capital, the big ideas, the big projects that require, more infusion, we're just not quite working together, So Harbor really is a platform where we can work together and, bring sort of the philanthropic, element together with the creative element and just see what happens, And I think in the end, that's what a platform really is a place where, new value can get created that isn't necessarily intended by the founders.
Exactly. And that's the name Harbor is like, it's a safe harbor where everyone can transact. Our friend Gina, she actually a couple years ago wrote me an email and she said, "Hey, I just have a prophetic word on your life." She's really like a spiritual mystic. And she was like, "I see that you've been like this bird dog hustling, going out, making things happen. But I think this next phase of your life, you're going to be like a harbor and stand still and let things transact around you." And I love what you said because the harbor's there, but like all kinds of good has come out of it. Like so many connections, they're doing deals, they're now new friends. Even there's some romance that came out of our last event. It's fun. I mean, it's amazing. Like it brings me so much joy.
Romance.
We can't guarantee that.
We can't guarantee any romance, but we've seen it happen. But what's amazing is, this event we've got coming up at the end of Montana, which Kevin Costner is our keynote, and it's great. We're doing it in where they filmed a lot of the Yellowstone at the Crazy Mountain Ranch, and we have dozen celebrities coming, and some of the biggest philanthropists in the world bringing either their head of philanthropy there or attending themselves as principals. We're just so honored. So off the back of Sundance Film Festival leaving Utah, which has been a tragedy for the creatives in this community, like they fought so hard to try to keep it. It didn't work out. And we wish Sundance the very best. I'm so grateful for the Redford family. Amy's a dear friend. I deeply admire her. And many of my friends helped build Sundance and also tried to save it in Utah. But, we had a conversation with Mark Burnett, who recently moved to Park City, left Hollywood, moved to Park City. I was saying, I think he's the most successful film producer in the history of ever. And we checked it on ChatGPT. It said he is the most prolific and successful producer in television in our modern era. So it was kind of fun to see. But we're so honored that he's taken a bet on us at Harbor, donating, mentoring and being on our advisory board. But he said, "Lindsay, I want you to come bring Harbor Film Forum to Park City," which is a dream. This is where I grew up. I grew up in Camas, just right outside of Park City. When I tell anybody around the world where I'm from, I say Park City because people might actually know where that is. But ultimately, that's my stomping grounds of my childhood. And, there's going to be this big vacuum with this gaping wound in our community to lose something of that much value creation. And so we aren't going to replace a film festival. It's not going to be 70,000 people converging in this little main street and endless, kind of independent films applying or whatever. It's still going to be a forum, more of like a Davos of impact and media, pretty exclusive, but we might do some public engagement things around and off the back of that, which we're really excited to look into to create the most value. Because if we're bringing these titans, these kings and queens of culture and these philanthropists to our state, let's leverage that in the most effective way possible to bring the most valuable and like a rising tide lift all boats. So we're excited. So if you want to get involved, whether it's sponsorship or you'd like to connect with us as a creative, if you'd like to, find out more about what we're up to, we just invite it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a nonprofit. This is a movement we're building. It's way bigger than us. We don't totally know what it's going to become. Matt's been amazing at helping us stay grounded and focused because, I think some people have said, "Are you guys participant 2.0?" And I'm like, no, we're not like a difference by degrees, we're a difference in kind, because Participant was a studio. And even though they gave it, and we stand on the shoulders of giants like Jeff Skoll, we're so grateful for his work. But, you know, even though he gave us like Green Book and Lincoln and Wonder that were huge box office successes, it didn't quite make up the 100-person overhead of a big studio. And so it wasn't really built in a financially sustainable way. And so it ultimately shut down eventually. We're hoping with Harbor, with our model, we can stay really lean, no matter how big the fund gets, you know, never have more than a dozen employees kind of thing, and stay really, really lean, so that we can put as much money into the actual art as possible so that we can have the greatest potential impact for good. So I don't know if you guys have anything else to say, but.
Just, I think that's a pretty good wrap. Yeah. We just love you, Linz. And
thanks, guys.
We appreciate the invite.
Thank you. So thank you for joining us for our Harbor Fund podcast. And this is our first episode to explain who we are and what we're about, what we're doing. Please follow us on social media or like and subscribe, whatever all the things they say to help with engagement so that people know we exist. Thanks so much. Love you. Bye.
Thanks.